in real time. I'm Avi Bernard in for Areva Martin today, and let's get you caught up. Yevgeny Prigozhin, in news that surprises no one, it's right up there with water is wet and heat is hot. The leader of the violent Wagner mercenary group, who in June led his fighters on an aborted mutinous march to Moscow, likely died in a jet crash in Russia on Wednesday with 9 others. In his first public acknowledgement of Yevgeny Prigozhin's presumed death, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the Wagner mercenary chief was a talented businessman and made serious mistakes in his life. I'm sure the most serious of those mistakes was the attempted coup against Putin. I know a lot of people pronounce it Wagner, but it is with a W, so you have to pardon me on that. 11 of the 19 defendants in the Georgia election case have now surrendered to authorities in Fulton County. A federal judge yesterday denied requests by 2 defendants, Mark Meadows and Jeffrey Clark, to delay their arrests. District Attorney Fani Willis has given all defendants until noon tomorrow to turn themselves in. Trump has said he will surrender today. 8 underdog Republican presidential candidates debated yesterday on a stage overshadowed by Donald Trump, who snubbed his rivals in an attempt to show his dominance and consign them to irrelevancy. While some took aim at Trump, his nearest rivals either defended him or cautiously avoided him altogether as he faces 4 criminal indictments involving his alleged attempt to overturn the 2020 election, misuse of classified documents, and falsification of business records to make hush money payments to a porn star. The Los Angeles Lakers will unveil a statue of Kobe Bryant on February 8th, the team announced along with Vanessa Bryant on this morning. Vanessa Bryant made the announcement in a video posted to the Lakers' social media accounts at 8:24 a.m. Pacific on August 24th, which is 8/24, also known as Mamba Day, as a reference to the numbers 8 and 24 jerseys that Kobe Bryant wore during his 20-year career as a Laker. The statue date also ties Bryant's daughter, Gianna, into the ceremony, as she wore number 2. Bryant will become the 7th member of the Lakers organization to have a statue outside of Crypto.com Arena, joining Elgin Baylor, Shaquille O'Neal, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Jerry West, and broadcaster Chick Hearn. The Justice Department has accused Elon Musk's SpaceX company of violating federal law by refusing to hire foreign nationals who were granted U.S. work permits as asylum seekers or refugees. The company contended that U.S. export control laws and the sensitive rocket technology SpaceX uses meant that only U.S. citizens and green card holders could work at the firm, according to the DOJ complaint. However, lawyers from the Justice's Civil Rights Division said that the high-profile civilian space exploration firm's interpretation of those laws was inaccurate and resulted in illegal discrimination against people living in the U.S. with refugee or asylum seeker status. Donald Trump has tapped a new lead defense attorney as he prepares to turn himself in to state authorities in Georgia, where he faces allegations of orchestrating a sprawling racketeering conspiracy to subvert the 2020 election. The attorney, Sado, has represented other high-profile clients in recent years, including a star University of Georgia linebacker who pleaded guilty to sexually assaulting 2 women, and Sergio Kitchens, a rapper known as Gunna, who pleaded guilty to a racketeering charge last year. Sado's high-profile clients have also included figures like Howard Stern, Usher, and Rick Ross. And finally, Luis Rubiales will resign tomorrow as president of the Spanish Football Federation after he sparked international outrage by giving a non-consensual kiss on the lips to a Spain player as she celebrated her team's victory at the Women's World Cup. After Spain won the World Cup against England on Sunday, Rubiales grabbed Spain's midfielder Jenny Hermoso and planted a kiss on her lips during the medal ceremony, and later joked that he would take the team to Ibiza and marry Hermoso there. Hermoso said on an Instagram Live video after, "What can I do? I didn't like it." Rubiales made a half-hearted attempt to apologize, saying his actions had, quote unquote, no ill intentions and happened in a moment of the highest exuberance. But his apologies were not enough for Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, who slammed Rubiales and also called his actions unacceptable. Rubiales also appeared to grab his crotch during the match in boisterous celebrations. In this hour, we're going to have Kennedy Sessions, a metro area reporter for KRON in Houston, and also LA Times columnist Erica Smith joining us to break down the debate. And we'll see if we have time for some of these other topics. In hour number 2, it's all about the Maui wildfires. We're going to be talking to a couple of scientists at the University of Hawaii to kind of break down what happened, and also a couple of survivors of that fire. They're going to be joining us from the island of Maui. Can't wait to have that conversation. But when we come forward, we're going to get into the trending headlines of the day and last night's debate right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Gotta stay fresh, ma. House shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4, only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The 3 people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
Yep.
Okay.
And we're back live on Areva Martin in Real Time. It's Avi Bernard in for Areva Martin today. And we are going to start by talking about last night's GOP debate. And I keep telling myself, stop calling it the GOP. There's nothing grand about it. It's horrible, terrible accumulation of weird, psycho people who just have these crazy ideas that they somehow think are good for the country. But we're going to talk about that debate. And let's start by let's start with the worst. You know what? I'm gonna give you both Kennedy and Erica. And by the way, we're joined by Erica Smith, columnist for the LA Times, and Kennedy Sessions, a Houston area metro reporter for KRON. And I want to start with you, Kennedy, and just give me your overall thoughts. The first thought you had when that debate was over.
Well, I didn't think it was going to be as entertaining as it was. That's number one. But number two, that there was a couple of people, Republican candidates who I think were struggling in the polls before this, and now we're going to be doing a lot well, specifically Chris Christie. Also, I think Nikki Haley had certain points where she kind of, push back and forth on some of the answers. Also, Vivek is like now the new front runner in a way, I think. And we all see how Trump not only like owns all of them to a certain extent, but has made his like stench in the Republican Party. And now it seems like they can't, they're all running for president, but you might as well think that they're acting like they're the backup for Trump. And so I don't know. It was definitely funny. I was entertained.
Yeah, it does seem like a competition for the backup quarterback role. Like, the starting quarterback's going to be, we're all competing for the backup job just in case he gets hurt or something, and maybe even his vice presidential pick. But Erica, what were your top line thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. It was definitely entertaining. I expected it to be somewhat amusing, in the way that, you watch a movie about the world ending. That's a, dark comedy. But I didn't expect it to be as entertaining as it was. I actually laughed out loud several times. But I think that, yeah, you're right. I mean, it was interesting to see Chris Christie as a moderate, and Nikki Haley as well. I mean, they seem to be the only two people on stage who seem to be actually trying to get the attention of the general electorate as opposed to just the Republicans to get to the nomination process. The other thing that caught my attention was, I think, the question they asked about Trump, which I have to give Fox credit for doing the live video stream of the Fulton County Jail, of where Trump's going to surrender, showing what, for visual effect. But, the fact that how many people were just kind of peer pressured into saying they would support Trump if he won. I mean, that was such a moment that was so indicative of the larger Republican Party of where they are, that half the stage raised their hand and the other half felt that they needed to, just to show that they had a level of kiss the ringness to Trump. But I think it's Vivek. I mean, I think that was a person that, I had the fortune or misfortune, depending on how you look at it, of going to the NRA convention in Indiana earlier this year. And I saw Vivek speak at that crowd, not long after Pence, actually, and seeing the difference of, energy level of people in that room, how much people love Vivek. So like seeing him on this stage it made a lot of sense for me, but I feel like he's actually the only person that's running really for vice president. Like he knows he's not going to be president, but he's like wants to get Trump's attention enough to be the person that he would consider. That's how I looked at his role, as the disruptor / let me get Trump's attention and maybe be on the ticket with you.
Yeah, he seemed kind of like the annoying little brother, like you have like this friend who kind of like wants to be part of the group, and so you kind of let him hang out, but he also really gets on your nerves, and you
yep.
You're trying to kind of ditch him whenever you get a chance to.
Yeah,
his ideas are also insane, but he is a charismatic speaker. He does have that for him, but his ideas are so crazy. Raising the voting age to 25, kind of going ahead and giving Ukraine to Russia, kind of just go ahead and let them have it. And his justification for that is that it would hurt China in some way, because Russia being hurt will make them go and be closer to China. I mean, his ideas are just really, really crazy, and he kind of just feels like he's trying to just get as much attention as possible. And he was, by far, as you said, Erica, the most subservient to Trump. And it seemed like his answers were tailored for an audience of one. And that would be Donald Trump was watching, of course, the interview they take with Tucker was, taped a week ago. And so I'm sure he was watching, and Vivek, in addition to trying to just please Trump, was maybe just trying to please his base and the hardcore Trump fans. And when he actually said that climate change is a hoax, and that's one thing
that was interesting.
we're still doing that. I mean, even like Nikki Haley was like, yeah, we have to a certain extent, she recognized that it does exist. And the rest of them are still crazy, but none of them went as far as to say that it's a hoax. I mean, we had the hottest July on record. We had a hurricane warning in Los Angeles, and you had the worst wildfire in American history in Maui, a place that is not normally dry enough for those conditions. So, and this all happens within the same month. And these people are still crazy enough to say that it's crazy. Oh, but let's just back up a little bit. I want to talk about some of the lesser people on that stage, and and we can go any direction with that because there were a lot of them. But I think let's just start with someone who was originally supposed to be maybe the biggest challenger to Donald Trump, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He just looks so uncomfortable and awkward, and his attempt at a smile, it almost seems like a robot. I mean, like a artificial intelligent being trying to understand what it is to smile, and he just was shouting, and it was just, to me, it was just a really poor performance from him, and even despite him trying to seem like he was in command. But what did you think about that, Kennedy?
I mean, sorry, I just heard some thunder, and I was like, Houston, we haven't had rain in like 24 days. Like, this is monumental.
Climate change.
Climate change is real. Like, that's the other thing. It's like to sit up there on that stage and call climate change a hoax, and then at the same time he tries to backfire on Joe Biden not giving enough money to Maui. It's like, I thought you said climate change wasn't a hoax. But anyways, I'm sorry. Going back to your question, I think it's really funny to see Ron DeSantis not only fail to push back on Trump, but even like say his name. Like, there were certain points where he struggled even like saying his name, and it was very obvious he was uncomfortable with pushing back on Trump's presidency and some of the things that he's done. And also, like, you can visibly see him sweating. Like, there's videos of him like getting his makeup fixed throughout the hour because I'm guessing, I don't know if he was nervous or what the situation was, but it was so obvious he was uncomfortable. And even like some of the sayings he was using, I was like live tweeting about the debate when it was happening, but some of the sayings he was using was straight out of stuff that I've reported on that Greg Abbott has reiterated in the past. Specifically points when they were talking about education, when he said education, no, schools are for educating kids, not indoctrination. Like, Abbott said that exact line 3 months ago. Like, I reported it, like, and I also pushed back of like, what does that even mean? And basically they're just trying to say that, critical race theory and all of these things are being taught in schools, but you ask them to point it out, they can't. It's all culture wars information. And I'm glad to see Ron DeSantis crumble a little bit, because I think we needed to see him on a debate stage to know that he's incompetent for the job, and that he's just going to reiterate what his PR team and what his comms team is telling him to say.
Yeah, it was really striking just how horrible of a debater he is. And it just made me wonder, how did this dude ever get elected in the first place? Even in a place like Florida, which has gone farther and farther to the right in recent years, how did he get elected? He is so bad at this. And I was watching some coverage on MSNBC after the debate, and Joy Reid said there's a saying in Florida that says there are two types of people. There are those who think Ron DeSantis can be president of the United States, and then there are those who have met Ron DeSantis. And it seems perfect to me. But what do you think, Erica? Do you think that was the end of the DeSantis campaign, or do you think he did himself any favors, or you think he maybe will take a hit because of his performance?
It's interesting because I was one of those people early on that thought that DeSantis could really give Trump a run for his money. But, we've seen his poll numbers drop like a rock over the last, month and a half. And, a zillion, the bad headlines, the bad press about all of this, and some of it was, there's a lot of clips online of him, trying to smile. There's lots of clips, awkwardness online of him, like, talking to the kid who's eating the slushie about telling him it's a lot of sugar. But I think it's one thing to know these clips are circulating on various different, social platforms, another thing to see it live on TV and, for 2 hours basically. And, you could look at him and understand why his poll numbers have dropped. He's not good at this kind of campaigning. And I think he probably is second guessing himself because he's kind of in some ways like all those Republicans on stage, say maybe Vivek, just kind of painted himself into a corner because on the one hand, you can't insult Trump. On the other hand, you can't either praise him either to win the election. And I think DeSantis being what was considered the front runner behind Trump, or the second runner, was in a particularly tight spot. And I think he kind of failed miserably. And I don't know if this is the end of his campaign. I'm sure he still has some money and will try, and I doubt he's going to give up after one debate. But I mean, I definitely think it was a huge, ding against him. But, that said, other than Vivek, I mean, I don't necessarily know if there's anybody on that stage that really had a great, in terms of the Republican voters, really had a great standout. I mean, I think for general election voters, we talk about Chris Christie, we talk about Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley had a great response on the abortion question. She took Vivek to task, as, basically like, shut up, kid, yelling at him, basically, which is actually pretty entertaining. I love that. But I think other than that, I mean, there wasn't anybody else who did great, right? Like, I mean, Mike Pence, and we all know he's not going to be president, but he kind of reiterated that last night, and Vivek went after him, and Pence went after him, which, as somebody who has known Mike Pence since he was governor of Indiana, that's probably about as animated as Mike Pence gets. So that got him that, hot under the collar is saying something. Yeah, I mean, I think DeSantis didn't do himself any favors, but nobody else on stage except for Vivek probably did either.
Yeah, it was. I actually thought that Mike Pence did pretty well. He had that one line where he made a comment and then Vivek said, "Oh, I didn't quite understand what he said." He said, "Let me say it slower for you this time." I kind of my school day self was kind of like, "Oh," that was kind of. I thought that was kind
that was a good one.
That was a good clapback because Vivek walked right into that one, and then Nikki Haley did kind of say, look, dude, just, you don't have any experience and it shows. I thought that was a good line. Yeah. But you mentioned abortion, Erica, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Kennedy, on all of them, on all of their thoughts and on this whole abortion question in general. It seems like any of them, other than with the answer that Nikki Haley gave, even that was, probably the most palatable, obviously, but even with that, all of their positions on abortion. That's okay. I know you're anxious we're all just anxious to look into this, but their positions are so bad, and so many of them have enacted 6-week abortions in their states or supported them. So what do you think about their conversation about abortion last night and how Nikki Haley kind of went a little bit more toward the center on that one?
I'm so glad you asked me about that, because that specific section led with misinformation from the moderators. Late-term abortion is not a thing. That's not real. Like, I need people to stop saying that because it's not a real thing. And, Nikki Haley, especially, she had the least aggravating response, honestly, in my opinion. The most palatable, I guess, because like we've been talking about, at the end of the day, a lot of these politicians have very, very strict abortion bans and don't offer opportunity for women to get the healthcare that they need, sometimes to the point where they are, they die or they have long-term illnesses. And so I think for them to say oh, we care about life and, we're about being pro-life. And then at the same time, you switch over to them talking about immigration, and DeSantis is like, oh, I'll kill anybody who comes in the United States. And, I'll put them straight in the ground or whatever he said. And I'm like, but y'all were just about life, right? Yeah, we're just about life. So it really just shows they're contradictory. And also to note that they kept talking about how Americans, feel about abortion. Americans do not like their abortion position, at all. They don't. Most Americans agree that women should have access to reproductive care. Now, when that happens, it's different based off state to state, city to city. But in the grand scheme, the majority of Americans don't agree with the Republican position on abortion. And I think that showed kind of last night with Nikki Haley's most palatable response.
Yeah, and just to a little sidebar on this, one of you made a comment about Ron DeSantis and his comments, and the one that he said that really stood out to me that made him seem like he was in 4th grade was like, yeah, they're going to come across the border and then we're going to leave them stone cold dead. I'm like, did you dude, what is your problem? How old are you? I just forgot I wanted to mention that when we were talking about DeSantis earlier. But Erica, back to the abortion discussion that they had. at that. What was your main takeaway from that?
I mean, I think the main problem is that you have a number of people on that stage, Mike Pence chief among them, that really believe their beliefs are they are quote unquote pro-life, and they're not going to change their mind just to get elected president. I mean, some of them will, for sure, or back off or have something that's, as we've been talking about, the most palatable answer from Nikki Haley. But, I can tell you, for one, Mike Pence is not going to back down. It's another reason he's not going to be president, because we've seen in state after state after state that the majority of Americans want reproductive health rights for women. And I think that you have somebody like a DeSantis and somebody like a Mike Pence, some of these other folks that are on stage that are, trapped between, their base of Republicans who, a number of them are pro-life, quote unquote, which is really pro-birth, but, and a number of them who in the majority of the U.S. population. And so I think there's no way to answer that question other than if you're going to have something like Nikki Haley that's not going to kind of twist yourself into knots, knowing that the position that they hold is just deeply unpopular with the majority of the American public. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that particular issue progresses, in part because, the folks that have been pushing to forbid abortion in the nation, they're very vocal, and they're not giving up, and they're demanding that anybody who's running for the Republican nomination be very vocal about their stances against abortion, and they're not taking half measures. I think Nikki Haley got some grief today from the right to life people and some of these other folks. So I don't know. It's going to be this issue that's going to continue, I think, to dog any of the candidates going forward, except for probably Trump, because nobody cares what he thinks. Actually, they dislike Trump.
You could literally have positions on anything, and they do not care. It's so crazy. They literally don't have a platform. They didn't have a platform at the last RNC. It was just basically, whatever Trump wants, that's cool. Like, what if he just turned around? Actually, I do want to give rights to women, and I wonder what would have happened. That would have been so funny. But when we come forward, though, I do want to continue this conversation about the debate. We have other stuff on the rundown, but we'll see how much of that we get to, because there's just so much to talk about the debate. And I want to talk about the moment when they were all talking about whether Mike Pence upheld the Constitution. That's going to be fun to talk about right after this news and sports update on KBLA Talk 1580.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search. We are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to Tune in to Tavis Smiley, weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon, on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black.
KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Connection established. Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station. KBLA.
KBLA Talk 1580 might be music to your ears, but that Republican debate last night certainly was not. It's Avi Bernard in for today. And I'm joined by Erica Smith, a columnist with the LA Times, and Kennedy Sessions, a metro area reporter for the Cron in Houston. And I'm so pleased to be joined by both you ladies. And I want to talk about this discussion they had at the debate last night with respect to Mike Pence and the request, otherwise known as a demand from Trump, that he kind of choose Trump over the Constitution and just do what he says, whether it's legal or not. And they had a debate about this on the stage last night. And it was actually a interesting moment. And, you know, DeSantis tried his best not to answer the question. And Mike Pence, you know, he said everyone should have to answer this question, and they all tried to squirm out of it as best they could, other than Chris Christie. And I thought a couple of people answered it directly, and we haven't mentioned Tim Scott yet. He answered it directly, although he looked manifestly uncomfortable all throughout the night last night. But what did you think about that discussion, Erica, let's start with you on this one, of that discussion in regards to Mike Pence and his upholding the Constitution during January 6th.
You know, I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was probably of any particular question, it was the most telling of kind of where people stand on reality, maybe, or like the way, or the realities that are to come for Trump and, you know, all of his administration, I guess, save Mike Pence. You know, I thought it was particularly interesting that Chris Christie kind of took one, you know, went out on a limb a bit, even though he clearly is aiming for the general election voter by, you know, saying that, you know, Mike Pence had to do what he had to do and that, you know, Mike Pence should be commended for that. I mean, I don't know if I go as far to say he should be commended, but I mean, he did do the thing that he was supposed to do. And, you know, the fact that so few people in that Republican Party, and particularly people on that stage that want to be president, are willing to say unabashedly the truth, that Mike Pence had no choice. And that going out on a limb just by stating the fact is such a controversial issue is particularly telling. But it was, you know, it was good to hear, you know, Chris Christie actually come out and say it. Of course, it gave Mike Pence an opportunity to you know, pontificate and pat himself on the back for his doing what he was supposed to do anyway job on January 6th. But you know, I thought it was a really telling and interesting discussion, kind of in the same way when the moderators asked about who would support Trump, you know, if he won the election. It was just, you know, I don't necessarily think that Trump should be the referendum in all of, you know, all of the candidates who are running for office, but I think in a way that he's going to have to be. But it's, you know, the misinformation is only going to get even worse from now. It's not going to get any better with the various different indictments that is facing Trump and so many of his co-conspirators. So it's going to be interesting. But I thought it was an interesting, telling moment.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, Trump is going to kind of be the referendum no matter what happens, because either he's going to be the nominee, or if he somehow isn't, then, you know, his supporters, if they decide to vote at all, are going to probably look onto the person who they feel like has been most loyal to him. But you mentioned that moment when they asked who would support Trump, and they kind of all raised their hands, and a lot of them really hesitated, other than, you know, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson and Chris Christie, who did this kind of weird, you know, like a finger waving thing that from a distance looked like
yeah.
But they all kind of, and you know, Vivek was like, oh, me. And then the rest of them were kind of like, all right, I guess. And they kind of hesitated. And that was interesting. But it seemed like they really did feel like they kind of had to do that, other than Hutchinson, who knows he's not even going to win, let alone maybe even make the next debate. But Christie, that's kind of his plan, is to not be on that train. So, but Kennedy, what do you think about that discussion in terms of Pence being the hero of January 6th?
Yeah, it was honestly, it was a weird moment for me, because again, as a journalist, I'm going to go back to how the moderators framed it. And the moderators framing was, hey, do y'all think Mike Pence was right for doing his job? And it's like, why are we even framing the question that way? You know, like, it's one way to be like, how do you feel? Do you feel Mike Pence upheld democracy? Or, you know, like, make it something in that framing. But instead it was like, oh, who's happy like Mike Pence did his job? And so then it became, oh, we're all happy Mike Pence did his job. And it's like, why are we even, I don't know, it felt very elementary to me in terms of like the scope of politics, and like how not only we see like democracy crumbling, but like the fabrics of just like voting rights and how people get to elect their elected officials. And so it was just so weird for me. And even Chris Christie being like, we should commend Mike Pence, and it's like, nobody's going to sit here and say, thank you, Mike Pence, for not doing something illegal. Like, that's, I don't know. It was just so weird to me. But yeah, I think it was a good way for Mike Pence to like showboat, because to a certain extent, I think older Republicans, especially like older conservatives, see Mike Pence as like, you know, a new head runner in a way. And so I don't know. It was just interesting.
So
well, there's a debate on Fox News too. I was going to say, I mean, there's one thing we got to remember is that the moderators are not actually, being like objective in reality, like either. So I think there is some, it was an audience that was framed for where the GOP electorate is, and I do think that, you got to look at the questions and the answers through that particular lens and that grain of salt, because they're never going to answer. They're never going to ask the question in a way that's like, I don't know, commensurate with reality. I think Fox is better. The Fox moderators today were probably better than they were in 2020, but it's still Fox News.
Yeah, it is a propagandist network. That is what they do. That's why they were created. That's the mission they've upheld since they were created by Roger Ailes. So, yeah, and to your point, Kennedy, you did mention some of the way that they're framing the questions and the abortion question in particular. And it is important to note, as you did, Kennedy, that late-term abortions are not a thing. And even Nikki Haley, with her quote unquote most palatable response, was saying, "Oh, we have to ask these Democrats if they're okay with 38th and 39th week." Yes, please do ask us, because no, of course not. It's the only people who have abortions in that instance are people whose lives are in danger. And that's the only time that happens. And less than 1% of abortions happen in the third trimester. It's not something that happens. So they're very dishonest with even the way they phrase those questions. But there are some people who we haven't even brought up with good reason. Starting with I forget which Dakota he's the governor of, but Doug Burgum. He looked like he was just happy to be there. Super unprepared, very just milk toast, completely uncompelling, nothing to say. And it looked like, my 16-year-old nephew could have put together a better argument for himself if he would have been on that stage. He just really, just because you're from a town of 300 people doesn't mean that you can't make a couple coherent sentences in a row. Asa Hutchinson, we've talked about him. Tim Scott, let's talk about Tim Scott for a quick minute. I mentioned him just a moment ago, but other than that, he hasn't been mentioned by any of us, because why would we? I mean, it was so. First of all, even from the beginning, the introduction, he's like the only one I think that didn't smile. He looked really uncomfortable, just really awkward. And I was thinking the awkwardness would be just hogged by Ron DeSantis, but there was plenty to go around, and Tim Scott was certainly in that camp. Erica, what do you think of Tim Scott's performance, and do you think that he obviously is not going to win anything? Do you think that he maybe helped his standing as a vice presidential candidate?
I think Tim Scott was I don't know exactly what I expected from Tim Scott. I admit I haven't spent a lot of time watching him speak on the Senate floor, or, I've seen a few interviews with him here and there, but, I didn't really know what to expect, but I expected him to be a little bit more active and have more to say. And he kind of was just kind of fading into the background with Asa Hutchinson and some of the other folks that were on stage that we kept forgetting about. I think when he looked at his total speaking time, it was near the bottom. I was looking at a graphic last night, just kind of breaking down the amount of time spent talking. And so, he didn't have a lot to say. I think that, I think he joked at one point about being from the South and speaking slow. I don't think that does him any favors with the time clock. He doesn't seem to, I guess maybe it's a senator thing where you can just, speak as long as you want to on the floor. But, he seems like he hasn't been able to find a way to be able to give succinct answers in a way with sound bites and with punch. He's kind of drags every answer out, doesn't really say a whole lot. At this point, unless he gets, dramatically better in the next debate, which I think he probably will make the next debate, I don't see him being a viable candidate for vice president, because, as you said, he's not going to be president.
Yeah. All right. Kenny, unless you want to give any closing thoughts on the debate, we're going to go ahead and move on, because I think we've spent enough time on that bunch of that collection of.
Yeah. Just a one note on Tim Scott. He's boring, and we knew that. So last night just kind of showed us everything that we already knew, but that's all.
And the reason I want to move on is because of the breaking news that Donald Trump has been arrested in Fulton County. So we're going to talk about that when we come forward right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
Tell me you're the boy that girl.
I'm young, gifted, and black.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon.
And we're back on Areva Martin in real time. Avi Bernard in for Areva Martin today, joined by Houston area metro reporter for KRON, Kennedy Sessions, and LA Times columnist Erica Smith. All right, ladies, Donald Trump has officially surrendered. He has been booked, arrested. I can't wait to see that mugshot. I'm kind of interested to see which direction he goes with the mugshot. You know, people like one of his former lawyers, Jenna Ellis, she chose to go with the smile, you know, because some people think that makes it less bad, I guess. That makes it a better look if they're smiling. But what do you think about this, Erica, Trump's finally surrendering? We've been waiting for it all day. It has finally happened. It's just before 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and he has been booked. What does this moment mean to the country?
I mean, other than it's about time, I think, you know, now the process really begins. I think, obviously, it's a unprecedented thing that's happening in this country. It's it's a necessary thing, but it's also it's still a sad thing, I think. And it's going to be a spectacle. I mean, I think, you know, to me, I look at this as like, it was going to happen one of these days. It had to happen. What is he up to? 91 counts against him is something I think I read recently. I don't know. I guess I'm just, you know, cringing preemptively at the spectacle that we're going to see between, you know, the various different, you know, bodies that have in different states that have charged him. But, you know, it's a necessary thing to happen given what happened on January 6th, given the many things that happened during his presidency. And, you know, it's time for him to face justice like anybody else would.
Yeah, and that last point, Erica, time for him to face justice like anyone else would, is one reason why, although I understand why you and others say it is sad, it doesn't feel sad to me because he earned this. He deserved this, and it would be sad if this wasn't happening. It would be sad if he wasn't at least getting prosecuted and charged. We don't know if he's going to be convicted and if he ultimately might even still be president again, but I don't think he will, but he could. But the fact that he's at least being held accountable to this degree so far, it is a good sign to me. But I do understand what you're saying in terms of it being sad, because it's sad that he was even elected. It's sad.
Yeah, exactly. It's sad we even had to go through this. Yeah, that's what I mean.
I mean, we all knew who he was before we got elected, and about half the country still chose to vote for him anyway, and they chose to vote for him again in 2020, and they would do it again next year. So Kennedy, your thoughts on Trump being arrested in Fulton County, Georgia?
It feels like a long time coming. It definitely is historical. And I guess to a certain extent, I understand what Erica is saying about it being a sad moment in history. Like, I'm not sad he got arrested. I'm more sad that we have to witness this in modern day. Or really in any day, but especially right now, as we just watch the world fall apart, basically, you can see how optimistic I am. But it's just, it's a long time coming, and I think, like you were saying, it's justice, in a system that we see a lot of times, sometimes doesn't do justice correctly, and incorrectly, incarcerates Black people, especially, who didn't do a crime in the first place. And so to know that he not only did these crimes, but also was very outspoken about doing them and got an entire posse to go along doing criminal stuff with him. I'm excited for the rollout of the mugshots.
I can't wait. And so on that note, with Trump having surrendered today, he also switched attorneys, which is no surprise. The biggest surprise is that he found someone else who was willing to represent him. And this is a well-respected lawyer, Steve Sato, who has represented many high-profile clients, including Gunna, aka Sergio Kitchens, including Rick Ross and Usher and Howard Stern. And he kind of specializes on the racketeering charge. And he is now Trump's lawyer. What do we think, Erica, about Steve Sato, this racketeering lawyer who represents rappers, now representing Trump?
I mean, somehow it just seems, with the circus that is everything that surrounds Trump, somehow this seems about appropriate. But, frankly, I'm just amazed that lawyers are still willing to work with Trump. I mean, he's got this long history of not just mistreating not just people, but attorneys, and then not paying them, and apparently helping to get his attorneys arrested, and charged with crimes. Again, I'm just always shocked when Trump manages to find another attorney to represent him, and that's no different today.
Yeah, I don't get it, because his attorneys oftentimes need to get their own attorneys, like they are in this case.
Giuliani.
Exactly, and Giuliani especially, which is that his story is a whole other conversation altogether. I can't wait to see that Netflix documentary on his fall.
Yeah,
when they decide to make that. But Kennedy, what do you think about the rapper lawyer now being Trump's lawyer? It's
I mean, yeah, it's weird, but also people got to pay their bills some way, and I'm not even trying to be funny. People have to pay their bills some way, and this definitely feels like Trump is, that's another point. I've never seen Trump this desperate for not only help, but just in general, I need to get out of this. And he's been trying to claw his way out of this, and it hasn't been working. He's been through lawyer after lawyer, tried to make all these statements, tried to get his people to say certain things, and it just hasn't been working. So this is just his next move to try to push off jail time and other things that are coming for him.
All right, Erica, before we run out of time, I just want to ask you whether you think that all of these charges, and especially in light of Trump being arrested today in Fulton County, Georgia, surrendering, Do you think that these will have an impact on the 2024 election?
I mean, if I'm being an optimist, yes. If I'm being a realist, no. I mean, I think just hearing the applause last night and the boos, frankly, when, anybody spoke negatively of Trump, again, speaks volumes of where the base of the Republican electorate is. I mean, obviously there's some people who are willing to vote for other people, but, there's a good number of people who really just want Trump, and everybody else who was on that stage was a second, fiddle. I mean, if Trump ends up in jail, I'm not sure if that's not going to be good for his poll numbers or worse. I mean, right now we've seen the bump every time somebody files charges against him, he gets a bump in the poll. So I don't know. I'd like to think that, people would come to their senses and realize, that we really don't want somebody who could potentially be in prison leading the country. But, the last few years have shown the opposite, that Americans don't seem to be that sane.
Yeah, sadly, I agree. Kennedy, your thoughts on whether this not only this spectacle of him being arrested, but all of the charges cumulatively, whether they will have an effect on Trump's election prospects for next year?
I don't. I mean, I feel like the Republicans electorate has shown what they stand on, what their values are, and that they ride for Trump at dawn, always. And, at dawn. And at other times as well. But I think this is a very good opportunity for the Democrats to really try to not only hone in that Trump is a former president that is literally having a downfall, like what's it called, fall from grace, but also that look at how, these policies afterwards have impacted you and so far and so forth. And I think Joe Biden and Democrats have a long way to go in terms of directing that message in the best way possible, but they need to figure something out before 2024, because it's gonna be really embarrassing to watch Joe Biden against a candidate that's literally like in jail or possibly facing more charges.
All right, ladies, we're gonna have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time and your perspective tonight. Kennedy Sessions, Houston area Metro reporter for KRON, and Erica Smith, columnist for the LA Times. Thank you so much, and can't wait to speak to both of you again soon. When we come forward, we're going to be having a discussion about the wildfires in Maui. We have a couple who has a small business on the island of Maui. They're going to be joining us. They are survivors of the fire. They were on the island when the fire took place. And we're also going to be joined by Dr. Allison Nugent, Associate Professor of Atmospheric Sciences at the University of Hawaii, Manoa, and Dr. Clay Trauernicht, who is an extension specialist in ecosystems and fire for the Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Management at the University of Hawaii, Manoa. We're going to have that discussion right after this news, traffic, and sports update on KBLA Talk 1580.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out